Hello, everybody. Hey, David, you want to test your video? Yeah, I'm just
Hello.
all good. Let me just make you host. Okay. So the meeting is being recorded as well. Okay, I think we can get started. It's time. So, okay. So, quick round of introductions, right? So David and me, we have known each other for some time now. This is actually the second time we are doing this, right? And we did this with the first bootcamp students as well. Now, one of the things that as we have been looking at organic farming, and it's interesting that I see Mr. Brito also here. So David, the 30 certification agencies that I talked about, right? So you should connect with him later on as well, right? So essentially, LiteFarm is basically a farm management app, right? And people who have attended the Farmizen bootcamp, you probably know that we give a lot of importance on record keeping, and we tell you that probably one of the top 3 factors between which separates a successful organic farmer versus somebody who might not be able to sustain is actually whether they're a diligent record keeper or not. Because not only will it help you in figuring out what's going wrong, it's going to help you take action as well, right? And unless you actually measure that, you'll not be able to do that. And there are several parts to it, right? Uh, but one of the most important pieces is actually them, and that's only possible if you are tracking things. 60-70% of the cost structure is essentially labor. So unless you are able to figure out and have like a log of how much effort went into it, each thing, you will not be able to really figure out whether you are what your profit centers are and what your loss making centers are, right? So now a lot of people do this over Excel. People do it by keeping a written journal and so on and so forth. But what LiteFarm gives us is an option to actually use a very simple tool, right? So David will talk through this and then he'll open it up for questions, right? Where you can kind of, a lot of you have probably never used LiteFarm before. Some of you might have done it in the assignments in the Farmizen bootcamp, etc. But you can ask questions on how to adopt it and where you see challenges and stuff. Now, from the organic certification point of view, one of the interesting artifacts which LiteFarm generates is basically it makes the process of organic certification far easier because a lot of documents get generated. So you can export those out immediately. People who have done the boot camp, you might know, we went through this class where we talked about, how you need to maintain a farm log, how you need to have diaries where you know every seed, where did you buy it, the receipts and all of that stuff, right? So you can actually upload a lot of that stuff in LiteFarm and you can export it in a format which your organic certifier will be able to easily assimilate, right? And they are integrated with a few certifiers already, but you can also export the documents as well. So welcome, David. Thank you so much for doing this, and I hope this is useful for everybody. So over to you, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Shamik. I'm sorry, I'm pulling up our YouTube channel to share. I've shared already in the chat right now our general webpage. And then I am sharing our YouTube channel, which has various videos. There we go. Okay. Now I'm 100% here. So good afternoon. I wanted to say good morning. I'm based in Brazil, so I'm a little bit behind you all. So sorry if I get a little confused about the time, but as Shamik said, my name is David. To give you a little more context about me, I am much more, my career has taken me much more on the agricultural side than the programming side. So if there's any questions about the programming, I will try my best to answer them. But if I'm not able to answer them, then I will write them down and get back to folks with answers. But as I said, I currently live in Brazil. I'm currently working on my master's in organic agriculture here at a university here in Brazil. I've been with LiteFarm for 3 years. I'm the farmer success manager. So I am very fortunate in that I get to actually work with the farmers, whereas much of our team spends most of the time working directly with the platform, the application, and don't get the experience of working with the farmers. So I also wanted to say thanks to Shamik for giving me the opportunity today to present and share a little bit more of LiteFarm with folks. Sorry, someone just asked me for the link. And so, yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to share LiteFarm with folks. My plan for today is I've got a short PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to do that just to give a very general idea of how LiteFarm works, where we started, where we're at now, and then we'll dive right into LiteFarm. I think there's about 30 of us, so I'm going to ask if you have any questions, if you can put them in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye out there for any relevant questions. I ask people to put them in the chat because typically what happens is someone might have a question that we will get an answer to in a little bit. So if you have any questions, if you can put them in the chat, if it's relevant to what I'm looking at or what we're reviewing right at that moment, I'll answer it as best I can in that moment. If it's not, I'll probably wait a little bit until we actually get the part that is relevant. So yeah, thanks again. And let's get started. So let me share my screen. Um, can everyone see my screen? And they're seeing a big LiteFarm white page?
Yes, we can. There we go.
Perfect. Okay. Off to a good start then. So to give a little more context, we started at the University of British Columbia in 2016. It was an idea brought by Zia Mehabi, and then kind of working together with Hannah Whitman.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
David, just a second,
Sorry, what?
because we are seeing the notes, the slides with the notes. I don't know if that's the.
You
You're
should
not
be
seeing the full
seeing.
screen.
Oh, okay. Let's try this again. And now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
now it's good.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Thanks, Lottie. So as I said, the idea started in 2016. We launched a proof of concept in 2019 and then moved to open source in 2020. The current product lead, Kevin Cusson, was hired in 2020 as well, and kind of we began to kind of move towards this idea of developing a tool which could assist farmers, primarily small scale, diversified farmers around the world, in supporting them in organic certification processes. And so, all of that entails the documentation, the tracking, as there really wasn't any tools available for farmers in that sphere yet. So Oops, sorry, passed that pretty quickly. So ideally where we'd like to get is to get LiteFarm into the hands of 10,000 diversified farmers, as that will kind of allow us to get a better understanding of what farmers need in general with a tool such as this. We're getting pretty close, we're not there yet. But our main strategy for getting this tool, making this tool useful for farmers and getting it in the hands of 10,000 farmers is focusing on the usability and the utility for diversified and sustainable farmers. Help farmers generate more income. So as Shami kind of talked about, there's a key component there of tracking your finances and really understanding where you're making money and where you're losing money. And the only way you can do that is really if you track all of your inputs and then all of your sales. And so what LiteFarm has been built to do is to allow the farmer to track both of those components. We also are currently working on developing more of this third point, which is providing more knowledge and tools to help farmers improve their practices. It's something we're currently working on. It's not the strongest part of LiteFarm, but it is something we are developing. And then to give you a better picture of kind of where LiteFarm stands today, it is used in more than 150 countries on 4,500 farms and with 6,000 users. As you can see here, India has got some hotspots where there's been a substantial amount of growth. I have no doubt a huge portion of that is our work with Farmizen. So thank you again, Shamik, and Farmizen. And then diving a little bit more into the platform itself. So to start, you have a map where you can add up to 15 different area types. So that's fields, that's greenhouses, that may be a barn or a house, basically 15 different elements that you can document on your farm in the map. It's a really simple way to create a digital representation of your farm with a click and point. You can also, in the areas where you can grow things, if something is organic, if it's in transition, or if it's non-organic, and then you can come in and edit that as you move along the process of certification, if that's something you would like to do. You can also export and share this map as a PDF, and then you can filter by various area types. So if you only want to see the crop production areas, you could see that. If you want to see your greenhouses, you could see that. Then within LiteFarm, we have a crop catalog, which has more than 375 preloaded crops. You also have the ability to add new crops, and then you can also indicate by variety. So if I have tomatoes, but I have various varieties of tomatoes, I would have tomato as a crop, and then when I click into that, I would see all the varieties of my tomato. You can also nominate crops to be added to LiteFarm's catalog. And I'll cover that during the presentation, but something I'm assuming we're going to be seeing more and more as more farmers from India use the platform is there might be crops that are missing that are commonly used in India but are missing from our crop catalog. And so users have the option of creating, you can add a new crop, and then when you add that crop, you can also indicate if you would like it to be added to the crop catalog. Because how it works right now is if I add a new crop, I can see that crop in my crop catalog, but no other farmer can see that in their crop catalog. And that's kind of to reduce messiness, because otherwise the crop catalog will get messy pretty quickly with probably a lot of duplicates of farmers adding the same crop. Also with crops, you can document if the crop is organic or not, if the seeds were modified or genetically treated, who the supplier is, if it's an annual or perennial, and then you can also indicate personalized photos. As you saw here, we have a lot of photos, but if you would like to include your own personalized photo of the crop, you can add that as well. So then within crops, you can create a crop plan indicating the method and date of your seeding, your transplanting, and your harvesting. You can then also indicate different tasks. such as if you need to apply a product, if you're watering, you can also indicate bed prep, and then much more. As you can see here, I think up to transplant, those are all default tasks that come with LiteFarm standard. And then you can also indicate customized tasks if you need to. And so each task, you can also add additional notes throughout much of LiteFarm. So to cover a little bit more about tasks, for each task type, there are a standard set of attributes that you can indicate, such as the date, the area, if you're going to be working with a specific crop or not, what that crop is. And then there will be specific details that are only relevant to that task type. So for example, with pest control, you would have the option to indicate that you're applying a product and then input that information of what product you're applying and to what crops. Whereas for field work, you could maybe indicate that you're doing bed prep and where you're doing that and how you're doing that.
So guys, don't worry if this is seeming a little confusing right now, because many of you have not played with the app, right? So after this initial quick presentation, maybe 5-6 more minutes, we are going to actually look at demo. We'll look at a live demo of the system. And I think most of these things will start making sense then. So bear with us.
Yeah, thanks, Shamik. Yeah. I'll try and go through this quickly so we can actually get into the app. So then you can also manage your finances. You can document expenses and revenues. You can create personalized expenses and revenues. So LiteFarm comes with a set of different expenses and revenues, but then you can also add personalized expenses and revenues. And then you can also export a finance report. So that would be a list of all your expenses and all your revenues. You can also upload and export and download farm documents. This is a lot for the certification process. You can upload purchasing invoices, methods of pest control use, soil sample results, basically any file type that you want, you could upload to LiteFarm, have it there, and then download it when you need it. So lastly, you can also export, sorry, I covered that pretty quickly. You can export large amounts of farm information. For most certification processes, this is pretty relevant. You can include a list with all the crops, including variety, supplier, organic or not. You can also indicate there's two different exports. One, which would indicate any cultivation products. So that would either be something you applied as a pest preventative step or fertilizer, anything like that. And then also cleaning products. And then you can get a list of all the farm areas as well. And we've done these in Excel so that you can copy and use them however you want. So some additional features, you can invite various users to the farm in 4 different roles. There's the farm owner, farm manager, extension officer, and worker. You can also see sale prices for other nearby LiteFarm users anonymously. And then you can also generate a report of the farm's biodiversity. So within LiteFarm, we have integration with a multitude of different platforms. One of them is iNaturalist, which is a citizen science platform where anyone can log on, create an account, and indicate sightings of either plants or animals. And then if that sighting occurred on your farm, it would be included in this biodiversity report. And I also wanted to emphasize that all of that and many more features is 100% free. The LiteFarm is 100% free for the users. It will always be that way. We are grant funded, and we also, we recognize that for many small scale farmers, they need a tool like this, but there's a cost prohibition for many platforms such as this. So we've designed LiteFarm to be 100% free, and it always will be 100% free. That's the end of the slide. I'm going to stop sharing there. I didn't see any questions come up in the chat, and I know as Shamik said, that may have been a little confusing, a lot of stuff. So let's jump right in to the actual platform itself. To give folks an idea, I've already gone in through and created a farm that we'll be using for the demo today. But the process to actually create, can everyone see my, there we go, okay. So this is the main home page for LiteFarm once you've created an account and added a farm. As I was saying, the process for actually creating an account in LiteFarm is pretty quick. It could probably take about 3 to 5 minutes to create an account. But the actual process of creating a farm with all that depth and complexity takes a little bit longer. That can take anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes, 2 to 3 hours. One way I really want to think about LiteFarm and kind of emphasize is that LiteFarm is a tool. With any tool, there's a learning curve. The more powerful the tool, potentially the more powerful, the longer the learning curve. LiteFarm can be a very powerful tool, and we recognize the learning curve can be a little longer. It can take a while to set it up. But once you set it up, the day-to-day use of it is minimal. You can document your tasks. We've got a lot of farmers who will sit down on a Sunday or maybe Saturday before the week actually starts and go through in LiteFarm and kind of do the planning and also maybe register all the tasks that were completed the week before. And so there's many ways you can use LiteFarm. We've kind of built it such that the farmer can use it however is most relevant for them. So if they really want to be keeping track of that stuff on a day-to-day aspect, LiteFarm is built to be used on a mobile device. So if you actually want to be tracking that stuff in the field, if you have signal, you can be doing that. But if you'd much rather just register that stuff at the end of the week, you could also do that. One thing I also wanted to be clear about, LiteFarm is not an actual application that you can download and have on your phone. What it is it's a web-based platform. So we've designed it to be used in Google Chrome. So as long as you have Google Chrome and you've got Signal, you can use LiteFarm, be it on your laptop or be it on your cell phone. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So jumping in, the first place in LiteFarm is map. So as I mentioned during the presentation, there are, there we go. There are up to 15 different areas that you can indicate in LiteFarm. You can indicate a barn, you can indicate a field, you can indicate a garden. You can also indicate a buffer zone, which is pretty standard requirement for most organic certification processes. You can indicate fences, water courses. If you have sensors, you can indicate sensors. We're currently linked with another organization called ESI, which will actually, if you have an ESI sensor, and I can share more about that for anyone who's interested. I can share more information about that for anyone who's interested. If you have an ESI sensor, we'll actually be able to pull that data real time into LiteFarm and host it here at LiteFarm. You can also indicate a water valve. And so if you want to draw a new area, you can come in, select the area type you'd like to draw, and you can drop those points here. Close the area. Once you've closed it, you can either redraw or confirm, or if you need to adjust anything, you can drag the points. Then you can also confirm. You can give the field a name that's relevant for you. So I've just put in field 1, 2, 3, but if this is your field for growing eggplant, you can put that in. You can also indicate the status of the field. You can indicate if it's non-organic, organic, or transitioning. If I indicate transitioning, I'll actually get an eligible transition date. This isn't automatic. So, if I was to put in if I was to put in Saturday, once we hit Saturday, it's not actually going to transition. I have to come in and manually do that, but it would still be here. The total area and the perimeter are also something we calculate on the for the farmer. But if you have a better idea, or if you know that it's bigger or smaller than that, you can come in and edit that. And then, as I also said, you can add notes and you can save. And so once you saved, it'll be added to your farm. Then, so these areas already have some crops in them. This is my field 1. I've got an active spinach crop. I've also got some planned crops, and then I've got task crop. I can also see the tasks that are happening on this area, and then I can come in and see the details. Already, unfortunately, no, we don't have a Google Calendar integration. That's something we would like to do at some point. We do have a notification center here. And so, when you create a task and you assign it to someone, you would get a notification. So looks like Laurie's doing some work in the back end there. And it looks like she's assigning me various tasks that I need to complete. So she's created a fieldwork task and assigned it to me, and that was today that she did that. So going back to the map, also in your greenhouses, you can find out if, for menu certification requirements, if you have a greenhouse, you'd also need to have this information. Is there supplemental lighting? Is there CO2 enrichment? Is the greenhouse heated? Throughout the app, you'll have this little green leaf. That indicates that it's a pretty typical requirement for most organic certification processes.
So
when I
one
was
of
creating
the
this farm,
things of what I found while playing with LiteFarm is that when you play with LiteFarm and you are kind of even trying to create like a hypothetical farm or things like that, it kind of makes you aware of all of the things that you'll require when you go for organic certification. So that's a very good way. Even if you don't have a farm yet, right? And you're kind of just drawing up your plan, you should still go ahead and play with LiteFarm, because you will certainly, after playing with it for half an hour, you'll come out saying, oh, I didn't know these 20 things I need to actually keep track of, right? So that's actually a very interesting benefit of LiteFarm that I've seen. Even if you don't use it, playing with it, you basically reinforces the things that you need when you are going to do organic farming.
Yeah. Thank you, Shamik. So then, real quick, I'm going to add a farm site boundary. Nope. And also, if you have various areas, I'm going to add this real quick. Some of the biodiversity calculators and stuff like that, some of them are linked. And we say this throughout the app. Some things are linked to the farm site boundary. So I always recommend that you indicate that. Something else I also wanted to say, there's no reason, if this is where most of my fields are, but let's say I'm renting another field this year, there's no reason I couldn't include both of those fields on the same farm. So I can also add that area here, confirm, field name, field for add a note, save. And now when I open my map, I can see both my main farm and maybe the rented field as well. Then you can also, as I mentioned in the presentation, you can filter. So if I don't want to see all those labels, I can hide them. Or if I only want to see my field, then I can see all my fields without anything else. And then I'm going to show all. Then you can also, seen some questions pop up there. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that question, Artie. Does it indicate as per Indian environment and practices? If you could clarify that a little bit in the chat, that would be great. Naveen, that's a lot. I think we'll wait till the end to get to that question. We'll see if I answer some of those questions throughout, and then if not, we can answer the rest at the end. So as you can see, you can export your farm map. You can either download that or you can have it emailed to yourself. And that'll just come as a PNG. So that's pretty much most of the farm map. Definitely, I would recommend you can come in, you can play around with it. Of course, you know, if you draw anything, there's always the option to retire it. You know, if you drew it by mistake, or if this year you're not going to be using it, you can retire it or remove it. So now I'm back to this here. So going on to crops, this is our crop catalog. So as you can see, we've got a lot of crops here already. But if there's anything here that you can't find, I'm not sure what would be a good crop to use. So I'm just going to kind of say I can't find it. You could always add a new crop to the crop catalog. So as you can see, these are the crops on my farm, and these are all the crops I could add. So let's go ahead and say I want to add beets. I can either search for it in the search bar, or I can scroll down and select it. Let's go to beets. Once you want to add beets, you can add a common name. You can also add varietals or a cultivar. You can add custom images if you would like. You can also indicate a supplier. As you can see, this is required for organic certification. And here you can write anything. So, you know, if I bought it at a market, if I bought it at Agrovet, whatever I would like, I can document that. I can then also indicate if the crop is annual, perennial. I can continue. Is the seed crop or crop certified organic? I can say, if I say no, I'll get additional questions. If I say yes, I'll get some questions here about has the seed or have the seeds for this crop been treated? I can say no, save. And now when I go back to the crop catalog, I've got an additional crop here in my crop catalog. As I said, you know, if you've got tomatoes and you want to add a new variety, you can easily do that. Input the common name, supplier. Let's say it's from the co-op. Is a seed or crop certified organic? If I say no, I'll respond to these questions quickly. Should not be engineered? No, no. Save. And now there we go. When I go back to my tomatoes, I can see that I have two varieties. Ashwin, that's an excellent question. So Ashwin's asking, what are these colored indicators? So this is in reference to the plan, the crop plan, which I'll get to next. And it indicates if you have an active crop plan, a planned crop plan, a past crop plan, or a crop that needs a plan. So as you can see with beet, I added them to my farm, but they don't have a plan. When I go into spinach, I've added it to my farm, and I do have plans. So I've got an active crop plan, a planned crop plan, and a completed crop plan. And this is kind of how we allow the users to manage their crops, is within a crop plan. So when you click into the crop plan, you can see all of the tasks that are relevant to this crop. So I can see I've got a planting task that's been completed. And then I also have a field work task. I've got pest control. I've got harvest tasks. So all of these tasks relate to this specific crop. Going back to the crop catalog, you can also filter. So, you know, right now I don't have that many crops on my actual farm, but if I were to have more crops, and as one was to keep using LiteFarm year after year, this would get to be a larger list where this filter might be more useful. You know, if I only wanted to look for crops that have a completed crop plan, I can apply. and I only have one spinach crop that has a completed crop plan. I can then remove that filter. If I wanted to search by suppliers, I could easily search for that. From the co-op, I've got 2 crops. The supplier was the co-op. And those are attributes I documented during the crop creation. I think that covers most of the crop catalog. The next process is, as you can see, I've got an eggplant crop that needs a crop plan. I come in and I say, add a plan. Already, yes, multiple crops together in a row can be indicated in the, or you can have them in the map. They can't really be indicated in the map. So during the crop plan creation, I've selected eggplant. I can say I'm planting it. Actually, let me step back there a little bit. The crop plan has been built, the crop plan flow has been built as a set of questions and answers. For each answer you give, it will generate other questions. So for example, right now, to start, it's asking me, is this crop going to be planted or is it already in the ground? If I say I'm going to be planting, then it will ask, how will you plant this crop? If I say I'm going to be planting it as a seed, or if I'm bringing in seed start from off farm, I can select that, and then it'll ask me what is the approximate age of the seedling or planting stock. I can input the age. Now, if I had answered that this crop is already in the ground, I'll get a separate set of questions. What is the approximate age of the crop? And then if I can also, if this is a wild crop, I can indicate that. So if I say I'm planting it from seed. It will be transplanted. Then I can indicate a seeding date. So let's say June. And this is in Portuguese as my Chrome is in Portuguese. But if your Chrome was in English, this would be in English. I'll say the seeding date is June 5th. Days from seed to germination, 7. Transplant, 63. That seems a little short for me. I'll maybe come in here and do 68. And then an initial harvest. Let's do 124. Let's do 115. Then the calendar will indicate your seeding date, your germination date, your transplant date, and then your initial harvest. So that'll be kind of when it'll start to be ready to harvest. You can then click continue. You can then indicate where you're starting this. So let's say I want to start this in the greenhouse. I call it a tomato house, but I also have a table in there where I do my start. I can say continue. Then I'll get some questions about how I'm actually planting this. Container, number of containers, say 2, number of plants per container. I'm using seeding trays, which actually give a little bit more space. I'm using probably the larger seeder trays for eggplant. And then throughout LiteFarm, there will be many inputs that are optional. Being optional, you can either input information if this would be relevant for you or not. A lot of these are kind of built with the idea that there might be 2, there might be 3, there might be 10 people working on the farm, and so there's a farm manager who's creating these plans and then assigning these tasks to be completed by individuals on the farm. Instead of having to have all of this back and forth of okay, what's the exact planting depth for eggplant? What is the potting soil you want me to use for the eggplant? You can input all of this into LiteFarm, and then on the actual task details page, Once the user comes in and says, okay, you know, today I'm planting the eggplant. They can look at the task details page, which I'll get to here in a bit, and they would see all of the details for how this plant should actually be planted. So I'll input some information now. You know, I want to go 1 centimeter, planting soil to be used. Let's say I've got a planting soil called Evergreen, making up some names there, type of container. Estimated seed required. I'll have 1 packet, so I don't need to worry about that. Then I'll get a question of where will I transplant to? So as I said, I'm going to start this in the greenhouse and then I will transplant it out to the field eventually. So I'll say field 1. And then I'll get a question about how am I going to plant this? Rows, continue. Are your rows all the same length? I can either say yes or no. Also, sorry, going back. So each one of these will allow me to indicate different attributes of the planting method. So if I say rows, beds, I'll come in and I'll get different questions than I had gotten for rows. I can also do individual container again, but I'll go with rows. Are the rows all the same length? If I say yes, I'll get a number of rows and length of row. If I say no, I'll get a total length of rows. So then I could just input the total length. I'll say yes, number of rows, 6, length of rows. Let's do 25 meters, something like that. And then I'll get an estimated annual harvest. So something I hadn't mentioned yet, because I wanted to kind of show this, is that for all crop, for many crop types and crops throughout LiteFarm, we have behind the scenes data or specifications about each crop, which are included to assist any farmers who maybe are planting something for the first time and would like to have a general idea of how much time between seeding and germination, how much time between seeding and transplant. And so a lot of that information is included with many crop types, not all, but many crop types. And then also there's estimated annual harvest. And so that's kind of based on a lot of research we've done using scholarly articles to generate what could be an estimated, a realistic estimated annual harvest based on the crop, the length of the number of rows, the plant spacing, the length of rows, and all of that information. But I can easily come in if I think that's really high or if I think that's really low. I could come in and change that. You know, same with the plant spacing. I could change that as well. I can do continue. We'll get another page with additional information for the transplant task. As I said again, you know, if you have multiple people on the farm and you want to use LiteFarm as kind of a way to assign tasks and have those tasks completed without having all the back and forth of how to complete those tasks, you can indicate a lot of that information here within LiteFarm. You can also then say continue. You can then give the crop plan a name. Market, whatever you want to add that. If you know who's going to be completing all of this, you can assign someone on your farm to complete it. I'll go ahead and assign myself. We also have this feature that you can have repeat crop plans. So this is kind of built for more succession planting. You know, if I've got a CSA and I'm growing lettuce, instead of having to create a crop plan for each individual instance of when I'm going to be planting lettuce, I could just say this crop plan repeat. And so if I select that and click save, it'll then take me to the option to create a repeating crop plan. You can indicate when the repetition would begin. You can also indicate with what the frequency of the crop plan. So it's going to be repeating every week or every month or, you know, every 14 days. And then you can also say after how long, you know, how long I want these repetitions to go. I want it to finish after 3 repetitions or on a specific date. I'm not going to do that because we're doing eggplant. So we'll go back. I now have a new crop plan for my eggplant. We could spend a lot of time going into specifically the crop plans because we've built it so it allows for as much diversity as there actually is in farming. And so, you know, that sequence of there's questions and answers, you can, you know, we've built it to allow the farmers or the users to indicate all of that diversity that is inherent in farm. And that, you know, includes crop. So then if I click into the crop plan, I can see all of the tasks that were just generated during the crop plan. So I indicated a planting date, which was June 5th. I indicated a transplant date, which was August 12th. And then I indicated a harvest, which was September 28th. You can also, if you need to, you can delete this crop plan. So, you know, let's say I got some of this wrong, or, you know, in the end, I wasn't able to get any eggplant seeds, organic eggplant seeds, and I had to delete it. You can either delete it or you could abandon it. If you abandon it, you can say the reason for abandoning it. So I could say something else, you know, couldn't get organic seeds. And then you could rate that if you want to. It's not required for this optional for this abandon. I don't want to abandon that yet. But if I go in, I can then also see, you know, all the dates. If I need to edit a date for that task, I can select the task date and change it. You know, let's say June 5th happens, and it's raining too much. I can't, you know, or I haven't gotten the seeds yet. I guess this is planting in the tomato house. If I haven't gotten the seeds yet, they're supposed to show up on the 10th. You know, I come and say on the 11th, we're going to update that. So looking at the chat, I mean, no specific individuals based on dates entered. No, so currently LiteFarm is like all communication is housed within LiteFarm. You can, there are several instances, like for example, if I invite someone to join the farm, they'll get an email invite, but I can't have notifications sent to anyone. Within LiteFarm, there are these notifications, as I mentioned earlier, but real-time communication, you can't really, there's not any ways to do that. That's something we would like to build out at some point and plan to. We're thinking probably more WhatsApp, ideally, so that's kind of more of a universal means of communication. Arty maps are Google Maps. We use Google Images for our maps. At some point here, we'd love to have the ability to import an image. We know a lot of farmers maybe have a drone or have someone who has a drone that could come up and take a picture, and then it would be much more useful for them to be able to upload that image and build their farm based on that image. And that's something we'd love to build and integrate at some point. Currently, we don't. So that's pretty much the map and the crops. The next part is tasks. So as I mentioned during the presentation, with LiteFarm, we have a variety of different tasks that allow you to kind of manage your farm. You know, all the day-to-day activities that happen on a farm can be represented in tasks. So as you can see, I've got a bunch of harvest tasks. I've got planting tasks. I've got cleaning tasks. I've got a pest control task. I've got soil amendment tasks, fieldwork tasks, all of that. And then is common throughout LiteFarm, I can indicate different, I can filter for tasks. And then I can come in and I can create a task. So once I start on the create a task flow, I can select from these default task types that are included with LiteFarm. Or if I need to, you know, let's say I've got a delivery task that I want to create. I could save that and add, and now when I go back to my tasks, I've got my custom delivery task type here. As I said, for all task types, there are some standard inputs, which would be date and area, if it relates to an area. But then as you go into each task, there's going to be more and more customizable details that are only relevant to that task. So for example, if I've got an irrigation task, I can set the date. I can indicate where it's happening. So field 2, will this task affect any plans? Because this area 2, has no plans, when I come to this page, I'm not going to see anything. But if I were to select field 1, which I know has some area, some crops, I can select which crop I'm actually irrigating. I can select the type of irrigation. Let's say drip. How do you measure water use for this irrigation type? I can either say volume or I can say depth. I'm going to say volume. You can indicate the estimated water usage. So if you know how much you're going to be watering, you know, I could say 25 liters. If you don't actually know, we have this handy tool called the calculator water usage, which allows you to calculate it. So if you've got an estimated flow rate, let's say, you know, it's about 5 liters per minute, estimated duration, I'm going to do 45 minutes. That'll tell me how much water I'm actually using. And then I can continue. If I know who's going to complete this task, I can assign it at that time. If not, I can leave it as unassigned. Save. And now when I look for type, irrigation, apply, I can see my irrigation task. If I come into the crop, I can also see that this crop now has an irrigation task. So Artie, does it work for fruit trees as an orchard? Yeah, definitely. So crop, you know, if I had apple crop, I could document that. Pretty much any crop you would like to, you could indicate. Naveen, can we edit field boundaries after saving it? Unfortunately, no. That's something a limiter in LiteFarm that we want to fix. Once you've saved an area, you know, I've got this eggplant area, I can't come in. I can edit some of the details about that area, but I can't actually edit the shape of that area. I would have to come in, retire it, and then draw a new area if I wanted to. Joseph, I'll get there. Yeah, I'll get there. So Joseph is asking about the inputs for organic farming. So as I said, LiteFarm has been built to support organic farmers. We do that through several ways. One is when you create a pest control task, you indicate the date. I see it's on the 24th. My tomatoes have been hit hard by aphids. You can indicate a pest control method. So if I come in and say foliar spray, you can then indicate a product. So let's say I'm using neem oil. You can then indicate who the supplier is, the ag supply. You can also indicate a quantity. Say 5 grams. And then you can continue. You can either assign it at that point or not. Now, if I come back to crops, I can see I've got a pest control task. So as you can see here, when I come into the task, I can get the pest control details, what pests I'm trying to control, how I'm controlling it, neem oil, what I'm using to control it, quantity, all of that is documented. As I said during the presentation, we'll get to in a second here, LiteFarm has the ability to export a huge amount of information about your farm that is typically required for most certification processes. And something that would be included in that is any farm input. So that would be any products I use on the crops. You know, if I need to add a soil amendment, let's see, on the 23rd. Oh, sorry, I jumped over this really quickly. So another way to add a task is you can add a task within the crop plan. And if you do that, it'll actually speed up the process a little bit, and that things will already be selected for you. So because I'm indicating tomatoes and they're in the tomato house, they've already been selected. So then for the soil amendment, nutrient availability, what is the product? You know, I want to use compost, create, supplier. I'm actually producing that on farm. I'm going to be using 50 kilos. Continue, save. So now I've got 2 products that would be included if I were to complete these. When you export your certification, part of that process is we'll ask for 2 dates. The date of when, the date range of when you would like to be exporting the details of your farm for the certification process. So if these tasks were completed within that date range, these products would be included in the exportation. I think there were someone asked about, vaguely remember someone asking about inventory tracking. So we do have a product tracker in the sense that when you document your product with relation to the tasks here, you can then export them, and that would be included in the export, the certification export. We don't have a product inventory, which is something we are planning on building out, with the ability to indicate how much of a product you purchased, and then also send you a notification when you're running low. So, you know, maybe you'd indicate that you want to be advised when you get to like less than 15% of that product, and then need to buy more product. That's something long term we'd love to build out, and we plan on building. But we currently don't have like a product inventory. Any product that you would have previously created during a pest control task or something like that. So if I add another pest control task, when I come into the dates, so now the product would be saved. So I can select them. The product and the supplier would be included, but I could also, you know, if I needed to add another newer product, blanking on the name. Yeah, we'll call it Pest Be Gone, something like that. Then I can save that supplier, Bob's Pet, the quantity. You can also indicate that again. And then you can continue and save. And so now in my, in my product in LiteFarm, when I go into that, I would have 2 different products. I would have neem oil and the Pest Be Gone, whatever those names are. So that's task. That's the part of creating tasks. Then there's the part of completing tasks. So if we come back to the task, you know, from here, I can see pretty quickly which tasks are assigned to me. And if they're late, they would always be pushed to the top. And then I can see the date. So to come in, I can come in and say, okay, you know, I completed this task. I can mark complete. The first question you're going to get is, did you have to make any changes to this task? So the assumption is, you know, if you're planning your farm activities, then there's a good chance, you know, let's say I'm planning my activities for what is going to be coming on the week. I plan them on Sunday, but then I complete them on Friday. There's a good chance something may have changed between Sunday and Friday. And so, you know, maybe this task wasn't completed as it had been created. So if I needed to, I could change it. But, you know, fortunately, we didn't have to do that in this case. I can say continue. I'll get a question of when was the task completed. I can either indicate the original due date, 2024, April 9th, 2024, or I could say, nope, it was today, or I could select another date. You won't be able to select any date in the future because it would be kind of impossible for you to have completed a task in the future, but you could backdate that to any date you want. I'm going to go ahead and set it with the original date. You can then also indicate how long the task took to complete. If I say 1 hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours, whatever I wanted to, I can say that. You can also say, did you enjoy this task? You can provide a rating. Or you can just say, I prefer not to say. The duration. So something I haven't touched on yet is LiteFarm has the ability to indicate an individual's salary by hour. So you could indicate to help assist with labor cost tracking. So, you know, if I am paid, you know, $2 an hour, whatever it is, and I complete this task, it takes 2 hours, then that would be $4 of labor costs, which comes to the finance part, which we'll get to here in a second. Once I save that, then that task will have been completed. Apply. The fieldwork task, April 9th, that was completed. And then I can come in and look at additional details. So the duration was 2 hours. This individual preferred not to say what happened, you know, if they enjoyed the task or not. You could also add task completion notes if you wanted to, all of that information. So that's kind of the process for creating and completing a task. You know, if you needed to come in and say, here I've got a soil amendment task for limestone to augment the pH. Quantity 30. In the end, you know, this crop, there was a heavy rain. I lost this crop. You know, I wasn't able to, the rain was too heavy and I just lost it. So I could say, you know, I had to abandon that task. Or, you know, if I got to halfway through the task and I wasn't able to complete it all, I could also abandon it. Whatever you needed to do, you could abandon it, or you could always delete it if you wanted. We recommend that unless the task itself was made in error, that you abandon it. And we recommend that because long-term, what we're assuming is that, you know, year after year, when you come into crops and you look back at your plans, you know, at some point here, go to a crop that has multiple plans. At some point here, you know, if you keep growing the same crop and you keep adding plans year after year, you're going to have a library of previous plans. And each one of those previous plans is going to have the tasks within it. You can also indicate if you liked that plan, what you liked about it. You can, and then you can actually, at some point here, you'll be able to copy that plan. So, you know, let's say 2 years from now, I want to go back and I want to plant spinach again. I didn't plant spinach last year. And I will be able to look at my library of plans and say, you know, okay, these are the plans, these are the good plans. These are the ones I was able to complete, and these were the bad. So let's go ahead and let's copy a previous plan. And so that's why I recommend, instead of deleting a task, I would say abandon the task, and then you'll have that history of why that task was abandoned. So I'd really only recommend, you know, especially as you start LiteFarm and you're playing around with LiteFarm, we've given users the ability, or we've built this ability for users to be able to delete tasks, such that, you know, as you start LiteFarm, you can play around with that without, you know, having your farm be super messy once you feel more comfortable of actually using LiteFarm. But I always indicate that unless the task was made by error or the crop plan was made by error, you don't delete it, you abandon it. Ashwin, your question, can anyone delete the task or is it access control based on the user? So this is task. This actually takes me to the next thing I wanted to cover, which was people. So as I mentioned in the presentation, you can invite as many people as you want to the farm. So as you can see here, there are 2 individuals on this farm, myself and Lottie, who is one of our wonderful, she also works at LiteFarm, and is doing a great job helping me and has created some tasks here in the background for us to play around with. But you can also invite additional users. So when you invite an additional user, you can indicate their name. Sorry, Shamik, I'm going to be inviting you, and then I'll probably be giving you some work to do today. In my made up farm. So I hope you're ready for a tough day of made up farm work. You can indicate the role of this user. I'm going to go ahead and say Shamik is my extension officer. You can indicate, you can include their email, and then you could prefer not to say, if I'll leave all of that there. You can also, as I said, you could indicate an hourly wage. So I'll go ahead and say 5, and then you can invite. The thing I wanted to cover real quick here is within LiteFarm, we have 4 roles. You have the farm owner, the farm manager, farm worker, and the extension officer. The only one with any limited permissions is the farm worker. The other ones are pretty much all the same. At some point here with LiteFarm, we will allow the farm owner to kind of dictate specific permissions within an individual role, and as well as possibly add additional roles that they'd like to include. But currently, no, Ashwin. Actually, yes, anyone could come in and delete a task. And there's not really there's some limiting controls on that. The farm worker does have some limitations. They can't add new crops. They can see the farm map, but they can't add new areas. They can't see the finances part. They can't see the documents part. They can't see the certification part of LiteFarm. So the assumption is they can come in and complete tasks. They can create tasks, assuming that, a farm worker is going to be pretty up to speed on what needs to get done on the farm, or, if they're in the field and they see that, the tomatoes need to be harvested, then they could create a harvest task in LiteFarm. But anyone could delete a task. So I'll say extension officer, and then I'll send an invite. And as you can see now, Shamik has been invited to the farm. He'll get an invite, and then can accept the invite and become an active member of my made up farm. So something I gave myself a pretty good wage. I don't remember that. I think maybe Larry was doing that. I thought I was working for free on my own farm, but dang, I'm sorry, Shamik. I am gonna go back in here and I feel bad. You definitely deserve a promotion. And then, so that's the individuals we can invite. Moving on, there's the finances part of LiteFarm. So here you can track both revenues and expenses. As I said, you can also generate a report if you want. When you come here, you'll see, the first time you were to come here, you wouldn't see anything. Here I've got some documented expenses and revenues. If I click into them, I can, view and edit it. So, the item name was field worker. It was, the type was contract labor. The value here, I could also come in and edit, or I could delete that expense. If I move back to the finances page, I can also see total expenses, estimated harvest revenue. I haven't calculated any of that yet, so it's not going to show up. And then I can also come in and see my total revenue. I could see labor expenses as well. And all of that stuff from the finances page. If I wanted to come in and add a revenue, I can indicate a crop sale, or if I wanted to add a custom revenue, you know, let's say I do farm tours. This is for no. Is this revenue generated crops? If I say no, I can save. And now in my custom revenues, I've got farm tours. Crop sales. If I come in and click that, I can say who the customer name is. You know, I want to see the farmer's market. I can indicate the date of when that is. I haven't answered Naveen yet because you can. So you can indicate the quantity, or actually, sorry, the expenses, no. But the revenues from a certain crop can. Long term, we do want to implement the ability to track expenses for each crop. But currently, you can't track an expense for a specific crop, but you can track the revenues for each crop. So if I want to come in and say, you know, I sold 5, I'm sorry to say I have no idea how much a kilo of eggplant goes for in India. So if that's terribly off, please someone let me know. I'll say I had 3 kilos of spinach, 8 kilos of tomatoes, just kind of making up numbers there. And I believe where is that crop? I may have picked a different date. I don't remember the date that I picked. Let's go back and do another one today. Let's do the 17th. We'll sell the dentist. Dennis really likes eggplant. Okay. There we go. So now you can see I've got the new crop sale. And I can get the details for that crop sale. If I had sold Dennis additional crops, I would get the list of all the crops there. I think this one, nope. No, each one of these was only one crop. But for each crop, I would get the crop, the quantity, and the revenue. And then, as I said, you can also export a report of your finances. So you can indicate all the different like all of the expense types you'd like to include in that report, the revenue types you would like to include. You know, if I didn't want any of my revenue types, I just wanted expenses, I could do that. And then I can also indicate, you know, the period for when I would like to generate the report. And then if I export, should get a download. Snap. I'll save that. Now if I open it, it's probably not going to have, it's not going to be too expensive because I don't really have that many expenses on the farm, as this is, you know, just a demo farm. But I can see some to give you an idea of kind of what this would look like. If I had more expenses and more revenues, it would all be here. So that is the finances tool in LiteFarm. As I said, I kind of glanced over this quickly. The labor cost is a calculation generated by whether or not someone has a salary and how much time they've spent completing tasks. So here I have spent 3.75 hours completing tasks, and the labor cost has been 100. So yeah. So that is the part of finances. We do have an insights part. I mentioned the biodiversity calculator. I'm not sure if iNaturalist is well used. It doesn't look like it. So right now I'm not going to be able to see many species, but if this was important for someone, then they could create an account on iNaturalist and register different sightings. I'll put that in the chat as well. So yeah, it's going to be, everything's going to be in Portuguese. Sorry about that. I'm not sure where on their page is to switch to English. There we go. So you could create an account and register sightings here, and then it would actually be included on your biodiversity report. Something else, we do have prices. So, I've sold eggplant, and then I would be able to see, it looks like there's no other farms. There's your farms in my local area. If I go up to 50, so it does look like there's one farm in my area. But it looks like they maybe have not sold eggplant yet, or spinach or tomatoes. And so we're not able to do a comparison of the network price and my own price. As I was to sell more and more eggplant, I'd be able to see the history of that, tracking it. And if there were other individuals in within 50 kilometers who were selling eggplant, I would be able to see a comparison of kind of what they're selling it at. We do have the labor happiness, which is here, and then we've got a soil OM. We use, I'm blanking on the name, but we use a third-party register for generating general soil organic matter based on soil maps. I'm blanking on the name. I'll have to share it with Shmi afterwards, but I'm blanking on the name we use for soils. But that is our insight. We also then have a documents page. This is really relevant for certifications. I remember in the chat, someone asked about soil analysis of water content, water analysis. This is where I would recommend, there's no way you can include those inputs more generally in LiteFarm, but you can save any of those analysis here in the documents page by adding a new document. And then these documents, if they were valid when you go to export your certification, they would be included in your certification report. You can also download them. So, if you had a soil analysis, if you had the physical copy and then, you lost it, you could come in and you could download it from LiteFarm. And then I think farm setting. So this is where, if you wanted to upload an image, on LiteFarm, we have the stock images, but if you wanted to come in and upload your own image, you could. You can also change it, if you prefer Imperial, you could do that. And then, throughout the app, instead of kilos, I would see pounds, instead of meters, I would see feet. You can add a phone number, that. Also within LiteFarm, and this may not be so relevant for individual farmers, but for extension officers, for certifiers, as long as someone is giving you access to their farm, you can come in and you can switch and you can move to their farm. So these are all of the farms that throughout time I've created, either demo farms or real farms where someone gave me access. So, if I came in here and I said Funky Beats Farm, this is a demo farm I've got in Canada. So, if I come in, I can see everything on that farm. This farm, I've used this demo farm a lot longer than the farm I was just showing. So there's going to be a bit more depth and diversity to this farm. If I come into the crops, I'll have a more extensive crop catalog. I've got completed crops. I've got crops that need plans. If I come into the tasks, I've got many more tasks than the other. I don't know actually if the finance is going to be that extensive. No, it's not. But if I actually expand that out, then I do have a bit more expenses and revenues. So the last part I wanted to touch in, I've got 8 more minutes, then I want to stop and then open it up for questions. The last part I wanted to talk about was the certification part that I've kind of talked about. I'm actually going to stay on this farm and do the certification export from this farm, because as I've had this farm for longer, I think we're actually going to get a better representation of inputs, of crops and stuff like that than the other farm. The other farm, I only have three crops. I don't really have that many tasks. It's a very young demo farm, so it's not as profound as it's not as deep as this one. But the certification export process would be the same across the farm. Because this is a Canadian farm, I'm going to get Canadian certifiers that we're connected with. We currently are not directly connected with any Indian certifiers, but that's a very easy process to at least establish, such that certifier would be in the list of certifiers, either organic or participatory guarantee systems. We have a lot of connections with PGSs throughout Latin America. And so not as many in Canada or none in India, but it's pretty easy for us to establish or to add them in a list. So if I select organic, these are the list of certifiers that we include in our list that someone could select from. But if you don't see your certifier, you could easily add that. I'll say proceed. I'll then say continue. So now I can export my certification documents. As I said, you'll select a range for your reporting date. I'm going to go pretty far back just to make sure we actually get a good representation of data. The 31st, I'll say continue. Looks like it has all the information we need to process your certification documents. So then I'll get an email. I'll export them. I will then get an email. So just the cost is there's really no cost. If any PGS wanted to, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that afterwards. As I understand, Shamik said you're a certifier, so maybe it'd be good we could have a little bit of a more in-depth conversation. But the cost for the farmer to use LiteFarm for their certification is zero, other than their time and learning how to use this tool and using it. But for a certifier to connect with LiteFarm and then kind of be represented on LiteFarm, it'd be zero, at least initially. There's some dependency. If LiteFarm is already capturing everything they need for their certification process, it'd be zero. We just have to add their name to that list. If there's some missing functionality, some missing attributes that they would like to be capturing, then we'd have to have that discussion of costs. But there's many ways we could work together to figure that out. You're not seeing it because I opened my email and downloading your certification documents. Documents, or actually, I could do that. So there we go. Everyone see that? Yes. Okay. So this is the email I got, which included my documents. So I say get document. I'd have to be logged in order to get them. This would include a name. It's a folder. I save it. I can then open it. And so there's a lot happening here, and I'll explain that. So basically, with any export, you would get these 5 documents. So as I said in the presentation, you'll get 4 Excel sheets. One would be the record A. Actually, let's open this. This is a PDF, which just kind of tells you what you're getting. I understand it seems get that set up. There we go. So this PDF will just kind of walk you through, what am I getting? I just got a lot of documents. What am I actually getting? And this PDF just kind of walks you through. The first thing we want to be really clear is LiteFarm, we're not a certifying body. We just built LiteFarm to assist in the certification. And so what is typical, what pretty much all farmers get is these 4 records. We do have within LiteFarm the ability to build out an additional survey question, an additional survey with additional questions. So, if a certifier was to want to use LiteFarm and felt that there were some missing parts, we weren't capturing everything they need for their certification process, we do have the ability to develop an additional survey that user would get when they go to export their documents, and then the answers to those questions would be included in the exports. I think I've covered more than enough. I don't need to go in too deep in that, but we do have that ability. So, record A, if you come in and click that, it's going to be organic status of all locations. I'm going to go through this a little quickly, just because I want to make sure we have time for questions. This is going to be standard across all users in LiteFarm. You would get the operation name, you would get the reporting period, then you would get a list of all the areas on your farm with the names. If you grew, if you had any crops, if any crops were cultivated in that area during that reporting period, that would be included as well. You could also, it also includes the area and then the status. If I had added any notes to that specific area, those would be included here. And then if I go ahead and enable editing, I would get a total area, a total calculated area of my farm. We've done Excel. We specifically chose Excel so that, if anyone came in here and needed to modify or correct any of this information, it's pretty easy. Let's say I forgot to update that field 2 had actually already moved to be organically certified. Interesting. So instead of having to go through and go back into LiteFarm, change the organic status on the area, and then re-export all my certification documents, I could just change that here really quickly. As I said, LiteFarm, we are not a certifier. So the assumption is that, if you're presenting these documents to your certifier, all the information that you're presenting to your certifier is accurate. That is on the farm. But we've built LiteFarm to assist the farmer in this process. So then if I close this, I don't need to save that. Record B would be a record for all seed and planting stock. So if I open that, I would get a list of all crops that were cultivated on my farm, with the crop and the variety. So, I've got apple, I've got gala. I didn't input a supplier there. Maybe at the time I didn't know the supplier, now I know the supplier, I could input that, as well as additional questions and details about that crop. If I'd added notes, those would be included here. Was that record I? So these would be cleaners. So we had a cleaning task, and if I had indicated a product during that cleaning task, then that would be included. You would include the product name, the supplier, how much was actually used, the date it was used, where it was used, and if it was used on any crop, that would be included here. I didn't use it on any crop as it was bleach. That would have been a very poor decision to use it on any crops. But the locations were included. And then, is this listed in the permitted substances list? So, there's also information that is relevant here that Canadian certifiers that might not be relevant to Indian certifiers. So if you needed to, you could easily editing. I could easily remove that if I need to. So then the last included document would be crop production aids. So this would be including any products that were indicated during a soil amendment task or during a pest control task. So here, you have the product, you have the supplier, the quantity, the date used, and then here we do see areas, demo test field, and then varietals as well. I think it's probably not including all the varietals. Draft text on that. There we go. So there you can see all the varietals that it was used on. The other documents in this export are documents from my farm that I had uploaded. So if we go back to LiteFarm and I go to the documents page, you can see I've got a bunch of documents here. So any of these documents that were valid at any point in the date range that I indicated when I exported my certification would be included in that certification export. So, all of these were included, and any of these I didn't want to share with my certifier or weren't relevant, I could delete them. So I have now been talking for a very, very long time. I have covered a lot of material. It has been a lot of information. I know, I appreciate your patience. But I'm going to stop talking and ask, well, probably intermittently, I will stop talking, but I am curious if there are any questions. That's probably about, most of what LiteFarm can do for farmers. We are constantly building new features. I don't know if anyone caught this, but something pretty crucial to many farms around the world is animals. LiteFarm, we currently don't have an animal functionality in the platform, but we are actually building that. That is probably something we'll be releasing later this year, with the ability to create animals, track animal activities, revenues from that, expenses, all of that as well. So yeah, I will stop there and see if there are any questions. I will also share my email here in the chat. If anyone would like to connect or has additional questions, please feel free to shoot me an email. So yeah, any questions?
Hi,
Hi.
thank you for answering so many questions, and it's an amazing app. Just that I don't have a land, but I design landscape. I'm a landscaper. But my projects are like they are small homesteads, and but this particular is for proper farming and all that. But still, I will try and use this and incorporate it when I'm doing all the plantation and all that. So that my clients can have that data of what was planted at what time and what they need to do. So I will try and incorporate it in that. I hope it becomes more flexible, as in kind of if it's not a land and just a small plot that I can upload my map, of the plan or something like that. But it's very interesting, and I will definitely use it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Artie. I appreciated your questions throughout the presentation. And yeah, I mean, definitely it's not been built for landscape specifically, but I could definitely see, if you wanted to kind of manage more of some of those landscapes, you could create many farms with one account and have you as kind of the extension officer, and then each homeowner could be a landowner or a farm owner, and you could kind of indicate. I don't know how active the individuals are in the landscaping. If they would like to partake in those activities, you could assign them tasks as well. I know it's definitely not kind of modifying LiteFarm to be used in the landscaping sense, but I think there are some overlap there. So LiteFarm, Joseph asked, how long has LiteFarm been used, and kind of what's the feedback from users? In your regions is kind of a tough question. To that part is kind of tough because we've got LiteFarm users from all over. LiteFarm became available kind of as you see it today at the baseline in kind of 2020. So it's been used for 4 years now. And the feedback we've got from farmers has definitely grown. Initially, farmers saw the potential for it, but it was this has been a non-for-profit built platform. So a significant portion of the time has been building the element to capture more funds and increase the possibility to give farmers actually what they're asking for. And so now we're kind of getting to that point where we've actually got a lot of active users who are using LiteFarm on a day-to-day basis to track their farms, to facilitate their certification process. And now we're getting less and less feedback of individuals saying, oh yeah, this could be a potentially really useful tool. And now we're getting more feedback of, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, because they're actually using LiteFarm on a day-to-day basis and are kind of noticing that there's still some functionality aspects that they want to have, but overall it's much more positive. So actually last week I was in a conversation with farmers from Brazil here, talking about how we could shift, some of those certification documents to really speed up their PGS certification process. So yeah. So Ashin, what's the policy you have on the data backup retention? So LiteFarm, we are housed within a university. So a key component of LiteFarm and it's the data that is generated within LiteFarm is that we, one of the key factors that was that generated the birth of LiteFarm is that, we know that smallholder farms feed the world, but we don't actually really have a ton of data to represent that, because it's really hard to compare data across different landscapes, across different farming platforms, across many different entities. So LiteFarm was kind of built to be able to capture more of that data in a way that could be compared. And so there is a research aspect of LiteFarm and its data, but key component of our data policy is that the owner of the data, be it the extension officer who's generating that data, be it the farmer who's generating the data, is always the owner of their data. We would never sell that data to for any profit. We may allow access to research institutions, but only if they've agreed upon our use of ethics policy, which is pretty extensive. They could never generate profit from it. And if they were, they would only be able to see individual personal data of farmers if those farmers had given them explicit permission. Otherwise, they can see very general data, but they can't actually pinpoint a specific farmer. And also, as I said, the individual is the owner of their data. So at any time, if they want to delete that data, they could just send us an email and say, hey, I don't want to use LiteFarm. I don't need you to have my data anymore. Please delete it, and we would delete it. They could also send an email and say, hey, I've decided not to use LiteFarm anymore, but I don't want to lose all of that information I have. Please send me all of that information, and then please delete my information. We would do that happily. Okay, so what if the server crashes and I don't want to leave okay, gotcha. So I would have to look into a little bit more, but we are actually, I'm fairly certain we're more based in the cloud. We're not actually on a specific server for our data. So the concern of one server crashing and losing all of that is not as relevant, but I can look into that more in depth and try and get more information on that. I had another question about, is LiteFarm able to use for permaculture farming? Yes. I guess it depends. If you really want to do the permaculture farming of oh, I'm blanking on the term, but where you've got your different your sectors, your zone 1, your zone 2. You can't really indicate a zone directly relevant to permaculture farming, but I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to use LiteFarm in a general permaculture farming sense. We've built LiteFarm. Well, we definitely have built LiteFarm to be more focused for organic farming, or agroecological farming or permaculture farming, maybe a more an umbrella term is sustainable agriculture. It has the capacity to be used for someone who's doing conventional farming and wants to transition, or who only wants to use conventional methods. We don't really want to limit the use of the LiteFarm of the app to any farmer. I would say that if a farmer has 5,000 hectares, LiteFarm is not for them. We really developed it for smallholder, small scale, diversified farmers. But if someone wanted to, document that they were growing, 1,000 acres of corn or 1,000 hectares of corn, sure, they could do that. I would tell them there's better apps out there for that. But yeah. There's another question about how many farmers are onboarded. So last I checked, we probably have about 6,000 users documented in the database. I would probably say about 5,500 of those are actual farmers and not test accounts or demo accounts or research accounts. What's the pricing model? So LiteFarm is 100% free. It will always be free for the farmers, the users of LiteFarm. So there really is no pricing model for the farmer. If a farmer cooperative wanted to use LiteFarm If a certifier wanted to use LiteFarm, depending on the requirements for the use of LiteFarm for that co-op or for that certifier, if we had to add additional functionality, if there were more support requirements for the use of the platform for those farmers involved in the cooperative or the certification process, then we would have to talk a little bit about pricing. But at least for the farmer side, LiteFarm is 100% free. Any other questions? Yeah, LiteFarm is open source. So, you can check out our GitHub repository. We have a fantastic contributor community. Lottie, are you still here? Lottie, do you mind sharing in the chat the link to how someone could get involved if they want to join the contributor community for the open source?
Yeah, we're sure.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, LiteFarm is open source. We actually have contributors from India too who support the code development. Yeah, we actually have a really nice contributor community. Actually, I think one of our Martin has supported the translation of LiteFarm to German. So yeah, we actually have a wonderful contributor community. Any other questions? I know we have a hard stop at 5 before the hour, or at 5 before the half hour. So I don't know. I think we've got 8 more minutes for questions if there are any other questions. Thanks, Larry. Well, if there are no more questions.
Do you have any tips for how to like it can be a little daunting at first to get onboarded, right? In terms of setting up all of these things. So do you have any tips on how best to kind of, get over that initial obstacle of setting up so many things, etc.? Do you start using it for one part of your farm, a few crops first,
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, no, that is an excellent question. Thank you, Shamik. So my recommendation is always start with one crop. Really focus on that one crop, become comfortable with like how to use LiteFarm with that one crop. And then, as you start to bring in other crops, it'll become a lot easier. And maybe, start with one area in your farm. Really start, I would also say the same, applies to basically anything in farming. Don't try to go from 0 to 60 in 2 days. Start with one crop, get really good at that crop, and then kind of branch out. Once you feel more comfortable, start with tomatoes. Once you feel pretty comfortable with tomatoes, then maybe take something into eggplants, something else, something like that. So I would really recommend starting with one crop, kind of focusing on that, and get comfortable with that, and then branch out. I would also say maybe don't try to do everything in LiteFarm at once. Don't do finances. Maybe try not to do documents yet. Really start with growing one crop, and then once you feel more comfortable with that, branch out.
So I have one question. I was trying to use, this is the most usage question. The image, the satellite image of my farm is pretty old. I mean, I don't know. So, how does that work? And that I'm sure it's out of your control. I completely understand that. But yeah, so the landscape do change a lot, and we have grown many things. So how do you work around that?
No, that's It's a good question because I don't have a great answer. We don't really have a way to support that, unfortunately. You know, long term, as I said, what we'd really love to do is have the ability to farmers to upload their own map or their own image. But currently we don't have a great way to do that. That's been we've had a lot of complication with that with farmers in Ecuador specifically, where they've really got these hilly regions. And some of them don't even have, you know, Google has just never passed over it and never taken images. So they really, or the images are just so old that it's just irrelevant.
So you suggest we'll have approximate area and then, you know,
yeah,
have a
yeah, get it?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, like
yeah,
if you
I'm
have
saying
your
anyways,
GPS.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so when you create your farm, you'll have a section where you can input your GPS coordinates. If you have your GPS coordinates of where the farm is, then you can input that. And then when you get to the farm map, you'll still have the older image, but you'll have a very good idea of where your farm is. And yeah, just kind of draw those and hope that Google Maps updates those images as soon as possible.
Sure. No, I've done that. I got my coordinates right. Everything is done. So just, okay, I got my answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Martin, for white labeling LiteFarm, no, we've never really talked about that. You know, something I kind of mentioned was the ability to really have comparable data for understanding improved farming practices, especially for smallholder agroecological, diversified, organic. Because long term, what we'd really like to do is be able to assist, you know, farmers coming into these spectrums of sustainable agriculture by providing them with regionally relevant data on how they can, you know, improve their methods, how they could shift to organic. Nagstar, could you close your microphone? Getting a little, yeah. And so we'd really love the ability to support farmers with recommended planting dates, with things like that, based on regionally relevant data. And I would be concerned that if we do white labeling, then you kind of lose that ability to compare across global farming methods. So also long term, what we'd really love to do is implement a forum in LiteFarm where, you know, anyone can come in and say, you know, hey, I'm growing, you know, this is the first time I'm going to grow this crop. Never grown it before. No one in my area has ever grown it before. Has anyone ever grown it? And, you know, maybe a farmer in India has never grown it, but it's really common in Ghana. And, you know, a LiteFarm user in Ghana can respond and say, hey, I've grown it like this. This is, you know, these are some of the pain points. This is where it could be better used. And I would be concerned that if we do white labeling, then you lose that connection, that community. So, yeah. All right, we have 2 more minutes. Any other questions? Lardy has gone ahead and shared some of our tutorial series as well. So that's another place I would recommend, you know, as you start using LiteFarm, if you're running into difficulties, check out the tutorials in our YouTube channel to assist you with that as well. I don't, Martin. Yeah, if you want us to connect us, that would be great. Oh, sweet, thank you. I'll have to check that out. So Shamik, I don't know if you wanted to wrap this up or.
Sure. Yeah, I think thanks so much, David. Thank you so much for taking the time out. And I think if there are any issues, so David is very supportive when it comes to you know, getting people onboarded, etc. So if you face any trouble in kind of starting to use this please feel free to reach out to him. He has shared his email address as well, right? So thanks, David. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for taking this time out. Okay.
yeah.
And I also know
Thanks for
that,
the opportunity.
especially because so many people are here from India. So one of the things that David has been thinking about was how do we get LiteFarm translated to Indian languages,
Mhm.
right? In terms
Yeah.
of translating all of the strings, etc. So if anybody is interested in kind of volunteering for that, let me know and I'll put you in touch with David. And
Yeah,
we were thinking of first helping him start with Hindi, but we should also do Tamil and we should also do Kannada and all of these other languages, right? That will
Yeah.
definitely encourage the adoption as well.
no, that would be great. So,
Cool.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Shamik.
Take care, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.